says, "Hair on his chest? He's your husband. It's your wedding night. Go upstairs." When the girl gets back upstairs, the man takes off his pants. This sends her running back down to her mother. "Mama, Mama, he has hair all over his legs. What should I do?" The mother stirs the sauce thoughtfully and says, "Hair on his legs? He's your husband. It's your wedding night. Go upstairs." The girl goes back upstairs, and the man takes off his shoes and socks. She looks down and sees that half of one of his feet is missing. She goes crying back down the stairs. "Mama, Mama, he's got a foot and a half. What should I do?" The mother hands her daughter the spoon and says, "A foot and a half. Here, you stir the sauce. I'll go upstairs." The agent of a beautiful actress discovered that the actress had been selling her body for $100 a night. The agent, who had fantasized about her for long, had never dreamt that she was so easily obtainable. He approached her and told her how much she turned him on and how he wanted to do her. She agreed to spend the night with him, but said that he would have to pay the same $100 other customers paid. He thought for a while, then said, "Don't I, as your agent, get at least a discount?" "Nope," she said. "If you want me, you have to pay full price like the others." The agent, although unhappy with that, still agreed. That night, she came to his apartment after she was done for the day. The agent did her after turning off all the lights. An hour later, she was awakened and vigorously done again. In a while again, she was yet again awakened and made love to. She was impressed with her agent's vitality. "My goodness," she whispered in the dark. "You are so potent. I never realized how lucky I was to have you for my agent." "I'm not your agent, lady," a strange voice said. "He's at the door selling tickets." "My neighbor found out her dog could hardly hear, so she took it to the veterinarian. He found that the problem was hair in its ears. He cleaned both ears, and the dog could hear fine. The vet then proceeded to tell the lady that if she wanted to keep this from reoccurring, she should go to the store and get some Nair hair remover and rub it in the dog's ears once a month. The lady goes to the drugstore and gets some Nair hair remover. At the register, the druggist tells her, "If you're going to use this under your arms, don't use deodorant for a few days." The lady says, "I'm not using it under my arms." The druggist says, "If you're using it on your legs, don't shave for a couple of days." The lady says, "I'm not using it on my legs either. If you must know, I'm using it on my schnauzer." The druggist says, "Stay off your bicycle for at least a week." A man was in hospital, and every morning the nurse would come to check on him, only to find he had shit the bed after a week of this. The nurse was getting fed up with it, so she said to him, "Look, if you can go the night without shitting the bed, I will give you 200 cigs that evening." The man woke up only to find he had done it again, and he thought to himself, "I really need those cigs," so he began to pull it apart and roll it up into small balls, then flicked them across the ward that morning. The nurse came round and saw the bed was clean, so she said, "Well done. Here's your cigs." The man, feeling guilty, said, "No thanks. Give them to the bloke over there." So the nurse went across and said to the man, "The gentleman in the bed opposite has asked me to give you these cigs." The man looked at her and said, "Well, if they're anything like his tease, he can keep the bastards." Brave Knight Edward is going to crusade. He doesn't know if he will ever come back or not. So he puts an iron chastity belt on his wife, gives the key to his best friend Michael, and says, "If I don't come back in 3 years, set her free." Michael agrees, and Brave Knight Edward sets out on his big black horse. He gallops toward the hills, knowing he may be leaving his beloved city forever. When on top of the hills, he looks back, just to have one last look at his beloved city. To his surprise, he sees a big cloud of dust coming towards him. He waits and soon can make out the shapes of a horseman coming toward him as fast as the poor animal can manage. When the horseman is closer, he can finally see it is none other than his best friend, Michael. Michael stops his horse, still panting. "You gave me the wrong keys." A salesman drove into a small town where a circus was playing. A sign read, "Don't miss the amazing Italian." The salesman bought a ticket and sat down in the circus tent. There, under the big top, in the center ring, was a table with 3 walnuts on it. Standing next to it was an old Italian man. Suddenly, the old man dropped his pants, whipped out his huge male member and smashed all the walnuts with 3 mighty swings. The crowd erupted in applause, and the elderly Italian was carried off on their shoulders. 15 years later, the salesman visited the same little town, found the same circus, and saw the same faded sign that read, "Don't miss the amazing Italian." He couldn't believe the old guy was still alive, much less still doing his act. He bought a ticket. Again, the center ring was illuminated. This time, however, instead of walnuts, 3 coconuts were placed on the table. The Italian stood before them, then suddenly dropped his pants and smashed the coconuts with 3 swings of his amazing member. The crowd went wild. Flabbergasted, the salesman requested a meeting with him after the show. "You're incredible," he told the Italian. "But I have to know something. I saw your act 15 years ago, and you were using walnuts. Why the switch from walnuts to coconuts?" "Well," said the Italian, "my eyes aren't what they used to be." A lost dog strays into a jungle. A lion sees this from a distance and says with caution, "This guy looks edible. I've never seen his kind before." So the lion starts rushing towards the dog with menace. The dog notices and starts to panic, but as he's about to run, he sees some bones next to him and gets an idea and says loudly, "That was some good lion meat." The lion abruptly stops and says, "Whoa, this guy seems tougher than he looks. I better leave while I can." Over by the treetop, a monkey witnessed everything. Evidently, the monkey realizes that he can benefit from this situation by telling the lion and getting something in return. So the monkey proceeds to tell the lion what really happened, and the lion says angrily, "Get on my back. We'll get him together." So they start rushing back to the dog. The dog sees them and realizes what happened and starts to panic even more. He then gets another idea and shouts, "Where the hell is that monkey? I told him to bring me another lime an hour ago." A young doctor moved out to a small community to replace an older doctor who was retiring. The older doctor suggested that the young one accompany him on his house call rounds so the community could become used to a new doctor. At the first house, a woman complained, "I've been a little sick to my stomach." The older doctor said, "Well, you've probably been overdoing the fresh fruit. Cut back on the amount you've been eating and see if that does the trick." As they left, the younger doctor remarked, "You didn't even examine that woman," and then asked, "How did you come to the diagnosis so quickly?" "Ah, you noticed I dropped my stethoscope on the floor in there. When I bent over to pick it up, I noticed a half-dozen banana peels in the trash. That was what has probably been making her sick." The younger doctor replied, "Pretty clever. If you don't mind, I think I'll try that at the next house." Arriving at the next house, both physicians spent several minutes talking with a younger woman. She said that she just didn't have the energy she once did and said, "I'm feeling terribly run down lately." "You've probably been doing too much for the church," the younger doctor told her. "Perhaps you should cut back a bit and see if that helps." As they left, the elder doctor said, "I know that woman well. Your diagnosis is almost certainly correct, as she is very active in the church." Then he asked, "But how did you arrive at it?" "I did what you did at the last house. I dropped my stethoscope, and when I bent down to retrieve it, I noticed the pastor under the bed." In a 4-story building, there live 4 residents, 1 for each floor. On the first floor lives a boxer. On the second, a professional football player. On the third, a blind man. And on the fourth, a beautiful woman. One beautiful day, the woman is in the shower. She hears the doorbell ring and she yells, "Who is it?" The person behind the door yells back, "Carson the boxer!" She exits the shower with a towel and opens the door. "Great news! I won this morning's fight," he says. "Oh, congrats! See you tomorrow," she answers. She gets back in the shower. She hears the doorbell ring again and she yells, "Who is it?" The person behind the door yells back, "Marcel, the football player." She exits the shower with a towel and opens the door. "Great news! My team and I won today's match," he says. "Oh, congrats! See you tomorrow," she answers. She gets back in the shower. So much good news in one day. Incredible. In the shower, she hears the doorbell ring for the 3rd time and she yells, "Who is it?" The person behind the door yells back, "Eddie, your neighbor." Knowing that Eddie is blind, she exits the shower without a towel. Since it's unnecessary, she opens the door. Eddie says with excitement, "Great news! I can see now." Mick and Patty had promised their uncle Sheamus, who had been a seafaring gent all his life, to bury him at sea when he died. Of course, in due time he did pass away, and the boys kept their promise. They set off with Sheamus, all stitched up in a burial bag, and loaded onto their rowboat. After a while, Mick says, "Do you think this is far enough out, Patty?" Patty slips over the side, only to find himself standing in water up to his knees. "This'll never do, Mick. Let's row some more." After a bit more rowing, Patty slips over the side again, but the water's only up to his belly, so they row on. Again, Mick asks Patty, "Do you think this is far enough out, Patty?" Once again, Patty slips over the side and almost immediately says, "No, this'll never do." The water was only up to his chest. So on they row and row and row, and finally Patty slips over the side and disappears. Quite a bit of time goes by, and poor Mick is really getting himself into a state when suddenly Patty breaks the surface, gasping for breath. "Well, is it deep enough yet, Patty?" "Aye, it is. Hand me the shovel." 15 minutes into the flight, the captain announces, "Ladies and gentlemen, one of our engines has failed. There is nothing to worry about. Our flight will take an hour longer than scheduled, but we still have 3 engines left." 30 minutes later, the captain said again, "Another engine has failed, and the flight will take an additional 2 hours. But don't worry, this aircraft can fly on 2 or even 1 engine." An hour later, the captain announced, "Apologies, but another engine has just failed, and our arrival will now be delayed by another 3 hours, but don't worry, we still have 1 engine left, and we can still maintain altitude at a reduced speed." The blonde turned to the man in the next seat and remarked, "If we lose that one, we will be up here all day." An Irish woman of advanced age visited her physician to seek his help in reviving her husband's libido. "What about trying Viagra?" "Ask the doctor." "Not a chance," she said. "He won't even take an aspirin." "Not a problem," replied the doctor. "Give him an Irish soluble Viagra. Drop it into his coffee. He won't even taste it. Give it a try, and call me in a week to let me know how things went." It wasn't a week later that she called the doctor, who directly inquired as to progress. The poor dear exclaimed, "Oh, Faith, bejesus and begorra! It was horrid, just terrible, doctor." "Really? What happened?" asked the doctor. "Well, I did as you advised and slipped it in his coffee, and the effect was almost immediate. He jumped himself straight up with a twinkle in his eye and with his pants a-bulging fiercely. With one swoop of his arm, he sent the cups and tablecloth flying, ripped my clothes to tatters, and took me then and there, making wild, mad, passionate love to me on the tabletop. It was a nightmare, I tell you, an absolute nightmare." "Why so terrible?" asked the doctor. "Do you mean the sex your husband provided wasn't good?" "Oh, no, doctor. The sex was fine indeed. It was the best sex I've had in 50 years of marriage. But sure as I'm sitting here, I'll never be able to show my face in Starbucks again." A British doctor says, "In Britain, medicine is so advanced that we cut off a man's liver, put it in another man, and in 6 weeks he is looking for a job." The German doctor replies, "That's nothing. In Germany, we took part of a brain, put it in another man, and in 4 weeks he is looking for a job." The Russian doctor replies, "Gentlemen, we took half a heart from a man, put it in another's chest, and in 2 weeks he's looking for a job." The American doctor laughs. "You are all behind us. 4 years ago, we took a man with no brain, no heart, and no liver and made him president. Now the whole country is looking for a job." A young couple had recently gotten married, and after 3 months, the wife went to the doctor for a checkup. The doctor told her she was pregnant. She was thrilled, but the doctor also informed her that due to a rare complication, she shouldn't have sex with her husband until after the birth. The wife went home and told her husband what the doctor had said. The husband agreed to try and hold out. After a month, the husband couldn't resist anymore and asked his wife to be intimate. Of course, she refused. Seeing her husband so depressed and sad, the wife called him over and said, "My dear husband, I know you're suffering. Here, take $100 and go to a sex worker to relieve yourself." The husband took the money and thought to himself, "What a wonderful and considerate wife," opened the door, and went down the stairs, feeling cheerful. When he reached the first floor, the neighbor's wife saw him and asked, "Why are you so happy?" He happily told her the whole story. She then said, "Why go looking outside for a sex worker? Give me the $100 and I'll take care of you." The man agreed, gave her the money, went into her apartment, enjoyed himself for 20 minutes, and then returned home. His wife saw him and was astonished, asking, "What happened, dear? You came back so quickly. Did you change your mind?" The husband replied, "I went downstairs, and the neighbor saw me. She offered to take the money instead, so that's what I did." His wife got very angry and said, "What a jerk! When she was pregnant, I did her husband for free." A young lady, jobless and spurned by her lover, heads to the Manhattan docks to drown herself. She has nothing, no friends, no family. She just wants to end it all. And as she's about to jump, a handsome young sailor shouts, "Stop! Don't do it!" And she says, "I've nothing in this world. I might as well end it." And he says, "Listen, listen. It's a rotten world, sure, but never end the thing the Lord gave us without changing everything first. I'm leaving tomorrow on a boat for Europe. I know one of the stevedores. I'll find you a place to stow away, and we can start a new life over there. I'll make you happy. You'll make me happy. It doesn't have to be like this." She agrees. That night they meet in darkness, and he smuggles her aboard one of the lifeboats below deck. He brings her a blanket and some food, and for 3 weeks they have this tryst. Each night he brings her a sandwich, and they talk and make passionate love until the dawn. But after the 3rd week, the captain is doing a routine inspection below decks, and he hears a quiet rustling in one of the lifeboats. And he pulls back the tarp and sees her, shaking in fear. "What are you doing here, madam?" And she tells all, I'm a stowaway. I have an arrangement with one of the sailors on this ship. He's helping us get to Europe, and he lets me hide out in this lifeboat, smuggling me food." "And," says the captain, well, he's screwing me." And the captain says, "He sure is, lady. This is the Staten Island ferry." A man walks out to the street and stops a taxi just going by. He gets into the taxi and the cabbie says, "Perfect timing. You're just like Frank." Passenger, "Who?" Cabbie, "Frank Feldman. He was a cabbie who did everything right all the time. Like my coming along when you needed a cab, he was always in the right place at the right time. Things happen like that to Frank Feldman every single time." Passenger, "There are always a few clouds over everybody." Cabbie, "Not Frank Feldman. He was a terrific athlete. He could have won the Grand Slam at tennis. He could golf with the pros. He sang like an opera baritone and danced like a Broadway star. And you should have heard him play the piano. He was an amazing guy, perfect in every way." Passenger, "Sounds like he was something really special." Cabbie, "There's more. He had a memory like a computer. He remembered everybody's birthday. He knew all about wine, which foods to order, and which fork to eat them with, and he could fix anything, not like me. I change a fuse, and the whole street blacks out. But Frank Feldman, he could do everything right. He never made a mistake. He was perfect." Passenger, "Wow, some guy then." Cabbie, "He always knew the quickest way to go in traffic and avoid traffic jams. Not like me. I always seem to get stuck in them. But Frank, he never made a mistake, and he really knew how to treat a woman and make her feel good. He was the best lover in bed and could take his wife to the top of the mountain. He would never answer her back, even if she was in the wrong. His clothing was always immaculate, and his shoes were highly polished, too. He was the perfect man. He never made a mistake. No one could ever measure up to Frank Feldman." Passenger, "This Frank Feldman was an amazing fellow. How did you meet him?" Cabbie, "Well, I never actually met Frank. He died and I have the pleasure of being married to his widow." One afternoon, a little girl excitedly approached her mother and announced that she had learned where babies come from at school that day. Amused, her mother replied, "Really, sweetie? Why don't you tell me all about it?" The little girl explained, "Well, okay. The mommy and daddy take off all of their clothes, and the daddy's thing sort of stands up, and the mommy puts it in her mouth, and then it sort of explodes, and that's where babies come from." Her mom shook her head, leaned over to meet her eye to eye, and said, "Oh, honey, that's sweet, but that's not where babies come from. That's where jewelry comes from." The relatives gathered in the waiting room where their family member lay gravely ill. Finally, the doctor came in looking tired and somber. "I'm afraid I'm the bearer of bad news," he said as he surveyed the worried faces. "The only hope left for your loved one at this time is a brain transplant. It's an experimental procedure, very risky, but it is the only hope. Insurance will cover the procedure, but you will have to pay for the brain yourselves." The family members sat silent as they absorbed the news. After a great length of time, someone asked, "Well, how much does a brain cost?" The doctor quickly responded, $5,000 for a female brain and $200 for a male brain. The moment turned awkward. Women in the room tried not to smile, avoiding eye contact with the men, but some actually smirked. A woman, unable to control her curiosity, blurted out the question everyone wanted to ask. "Why is the female brain so much more?" The doctor smiled at the childish innocence and explained to the entire group, "It's just standard pricing procedure. We have to mark down the price of the male brains because they've actually been used." A busload of blind people were on a day trip, and the bus driver starts getting tired. He says to the blind people, "I'm pretty knackered. I'm going to stop at the next pub for a bite to eat and a drink. What are you all going to do?" One of them replies, "No worries, we'll have a little game of football." "Football?" The driver cries, "But you're all blind." The blind guy says, "No, it's simple. We strap bells to the ball and then we can hear where it goes and we can have a kickabout." And with that, the bus driver pulls into a pub, has a bite to eat and a drink. When he comes out, there are paramedics and ambulances and police cars everywhere. The bus driver says, "What the hell has been going on here?" One of the policemen turns around and shouts, "You would never have guessed it. A busload of blind people jumped out and kicked the living daylights out of these Morris dancers." Twin sisters in a Newfoundland nursing home were turning 100 years old. The editor of the local newspaper told a photographer to get over there and take pictures of the 100-year-old twins. One of the twins was hard of hearing and the other could hear quite well. Once the photographer arrived, he asked the sisters to sit on the sofa. The deaf sister said to her twin, "What did he say?" "We gotta sit over there on the sofa," said the other. "Now get a little closer together," said the cameraman. Again, "What did he say?" "He says squeeze together a little." So they wiggled up close to each other. "Just hold on for a bit longer. I've got to focus the camera," said the photographer. Yet again, "What did he say?" "He says he's gonna focus." With a big grin, the deaf twin shouted out, "Oh, Lord Jesus, both of us? Can I be first?" A jockey was riding the favorite at a race meeting and was well ahead of the field. His horse rounded the final corner when suddenly the jockey was hit on the head by a turkey and a string of sausages. He managed to keep control of his mount and pulled back into the lead, only to be struck by a box of Christmas crackers and a dozen mince pies as he went over the last fence. With great skill, he managed to steer the horse to the front of the field once more when, on the run-in, he was struck on the head by a bottle of sherry and a Christmas pudding. Thus distracted, he succeeded in coming only second. He immediately went to the race stewards to complain that he had been seriously hampered. A woman named Jill stood up at her church's testimony meeting one Sunday morning, took the microphone from one of the church ushers, and bared her soul to the enraptured congregation. "I want to tell you about the awful accident that my husband Jim has suffered this past month. He was riding his Harley, lost control, ran off the highway and hit a tree. He was rushed to the hospital and could have died, but thank the Lord, all he suffered was a broken scrotum." The congregation gasped in horror. The men in the congregation were obviously uneasy and writhed in their seats. "Jim has been in terrible pain all month since the accident. He has trouble breathing. He has trouble swallowing his food. He can hardly lift anything. He's in so much pain and he has missed work because of it. He can't lift our children up to hold them and give them the personal love that they need. Worst of all, we can no longer cuddle and have intimate relations. He is in constant pain, a pain so terrible that our love life has all but slipped away into oblivion. I would like to ask you all in the congregation to pray for Jim and pray for us that his broken scrotum will soon heal and be as good as new." A dull murmur erupted within the congregation. as the full impact of this terrible accident sank in, and the men in the congregation were visibly shaken up with the thought that, "There but for the grace of God go I." Then, as the murmuring settled down, a lone figure stood up in the midst of the congregation, worked his way up to the pulpit, obviously in pain, adjusted the microphone to his liking, then leaned over and said to the congregation, "My name is Jim, and I have only one word for my wife Jill. That word is sternum." A small plane has an engine failure over the Pacific Ocean. On board are the pilot, the world's strongest man, the world's smartest man, and the world's richest man. There are only 3 parachutes available. The pilot says to the world's richest man, "You're the world's richest man, so the world needs you. Take a parachute and jump." The pilot then says to the world's smartest man, "You're the world's smartest man, so the world needs you. Take a parachute and jump." The pilot then says to the world's strongest man, "You're the world's strongest man, so the world needs you. Take the last parachute and jump." But the world's strongest man says, "Don't worry, we still have 2 parachutes left. We can both jump." The pilot replies, "But how? I already gave the 2 other parachutes away. The world's strongest man and then the world's smartest man just took my backpack and jumped." This is a story about a couple who had been happily married for years. The only friction in their marriage was the husband's habit of farting loudly every morning when he awoke. The noise would wake his wife, and the smell would make her eyes water and make her gasp for air. Every morning she would plead with him to stop ripping them off because it was making her sick. He told her he couldn't stop it and that it was perfectly natural. She told him to see a doctor. She was concerned that one day he would blow his guts out. The years went by and he continued to rip them out. Then, one Christmas Day morning, as she was preparing the turkey for dinner and he was upstairs sound asleep, she looked at the innards, neck, gizzard, liver, and all the spare parts, and a malicious thought came to her. She took the bowl and went upstairs where her husband was sound asleep, and gently pulling the bed covers back, she pulled back the elastic waistband of his underpants and emptied the bowl of turkey guts into his shorts. Sometime later, she heard her husband waken with his usual trumpeting, which was followed by a blood-curdling scream and the sound of frantic footsteps as he ran into the bathroom. The wife could hardly control herself as she rolled on the floor laughing, tears in her eyes. After years of torture, she reckoned she had gotten him back pretty good. About 20 minutes later, her husband came downstairs in his blood-stained underpants with a look of horror on his face. She bit her lip as she asked him what was the matter. He said, "Honey, you were right all these years. You have warned me and I didn't listen to you." "What do you mean?" asked his wife. "Well, you always told me that one day I would end up farting my guts out, and today it finally happened, but by the grace of God, some Vaseline and 2 fingers, I think I got most of them back in." On reaching his plane seat, a man is surprised to see a parrot seated next to him. He asks the stewardess for a coffee, then the parrot squawks, "And get me a whiskey, you cow!" The stewardess, flustered, brings back a whiskey for the parrot, but forgets the man's coffee. When the man points it out to her, the parrot drains its glass and bawls, "And get me another whiskey, you idiot!" Upset, the stewardess comes back with another whiskey, but still no coffee. By now, in desperate need of his coffee, the man tries the parrot style, "I've asked you twice for coffee. Go get it now, you moron." Before they know it, 2 burly flight stewards storm down the aisle, grab the parrot and the man, yank them out of their seats, and throw them out of the emergency exit. Plunging downwards, the parrot turns to the man and says, "For someone who can't fly, you sure complain too much." 3 sons left home, went out into the business world, and all prospered. Getting back together, they discussed the gifts they were able to give their elderly mother. The first said, "I built a big house for our mother." The second said, "I sent her a Lexus with a driver." The third smiled and said, "I've got you both beat. You know how much Mom enjoys reading the Bible, and you know she can't see very well. So I sent her a remarkable parrot that recites the entire Bible. It took the shams in the shul 12 years to teach him. He's one of a kind. Mama just has to name the chapter and verse, and the parrot recites it." Soon thereafter, Mom sent out her letters of thanks. "Milton," she wrote to one son, The house you built is so huge. I live in only one room, but I have to clean the whole house. Gerald, she wrote to another, I'm too old to travel. I stay most of the time at home, so I rarely use the Mercedes, and the driver is so rude. Dearest Donald, she wrote to her third son, you have the good sense to know what your mother likes. The chicken was absolutely delicious. Little Johnny went to a horse auction with his dad. He watched as his father carefully inspected each horse, running his hands along their legs, rump, and chest. Curious, Johnny asked, Dad, why are you doing that? His dad replied, Well, son, I need to make sure the horses are healthy before I buy them. Johnny thought for a moment, then said, Uh-oh, Dad, I think the UPS guy wants to buy Mom. A little boy from a poor family wanted a bike for Christmas, so he asked his mom. She sighed and said, We can't afford one, sweetie. Maybe you should pray and ask baby Jesus for it. Determined, the boy went to his room, grabbed some paper, and started writing. Dear baby Jesus, I've been good all year. Please bring me a bike for Christmas. But as he reread it, he hesitated. That didn't feel entirely true. So he tried again. Dear baby Jesus, I've been good for the past week. Please bring me a bike for Christmas. Still not convinced, he rewrote it. Dear baby Jesus, if you give me a bike, I promise to be good all year. Even that felt like a stretch. Frustrated, he went outside to clear his head. As he strolled, he noticed his neighbor's statue of Mother Mary. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He climbed over the fence, snatched the statue, and ran home to hide it under his bed. Then he sat down to write one final letter. Dear baby Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again, send me a bike. George came home from university in tears. Mom, am I adopted? He asked. Of course not, she replied. Why would you think that? George showed her his genealogy DNA test results. No matches with his relatives, but strong matches with a family across the city. Alarmed, his mom called her husband. Honey, George took a DNA test, and I don't know how to say this. He might not be our son. Well, duh, her husband said casually. What do you mean? She asked, shocked. He shrugged. Remember our first night in the hospital? The baby wouldn't stop crying, screaming nonstop. You told me to change him. He smiled proudly. So I did, and I think I picked a great one. A guy walks into a bar with his dog and says, I'll have a scotch and water, and my dog will have a whiskey sour. The bartender frowns. Sorry, no animals allowed. Before the man can argue, the dog pipes up. Hey, that's discrimination. Just get me my drink. The bartender scoffs. Oh, great. Another ventriloquist with a talking dog routine. Both of you out. The man pleads. No trick, I swear. Tell you what, I'll step outside and you can talk to Gizmo yourself. He leaves, and the bartender watches him turn the corner. All right, can I get my drink now? The dog asks. Stunned, the bartender pours a whiskey sour. It's on the house. Hey, could you do me a favor? My wife works next door at the cafe. Go order a coffee. It'll make her day. Here's $10 and keep the change. Sure thing, says the dog, taking the cash and trotting off. 10 minutes later, the dog hasn't returned. The owner comes back and asks, Where's Gizmo? The two head out to look for him and spot Gizmo in the alley behind the cafe, getting frisky with a French poodle. The owner shouts, Gizmo, what are you doing? You've never acted like this before. The dog shrugs. Yeah, well, I've never had any money before. Employee. Excuse me, sir, may I speak with you? Boss. Of course, come in. What's on your mind? Employee. Well, sir, I've been with this company for over 10 years, and I think it's time for a raise. I have 4 companies chasing me, so I wanted to talk to you first. Boss. A raise? I'd love to, but times are tough right now. Employee. I understand, but I hope you'll consider my hard work and loyalty to this company. Boss. Fair enough. To keep you here, I'll give you a 10% raise and 5 extra vacation days. How does that sound? Employee. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Boss. By the way, which companies are after you? Employee. Oh, the electric company, gas company, water company, and the mortgage company. A girl invites her boyfriend over for dinner to meet her parents. She tells him it's a big deal, and after dinner, she wants to take their relationship to the next level. It'll be her first time. The boyfriend is thrilled, but nervous. Since he's never been with a girl before, he goes to the pharmacy for advice. The pharmacist spends an hour explaining everything about condoms and safe sex. At the end, he asks, "So how many do you need, a 3-pack, 10-pack, or the family pack?" The boy confidently says, "The family pack, I'm going to need them all." That evening, he arrives at the girlfriend's house and meets her at the door. She beams and says, "I'm so excited for you to meet my parents. Come on in." They sit down at the dinner table, and the boyfriend nervously offers to say grace. He bows his head and starts praying. A minute passes, then 5, then 10. The boy remains silent, head bowed in intense prayer. After 20 minutes, the girl leans over and whispers, "I didn't know you were this religious." The boy whispers back, "I didn't know your dad was a pharmacist." An elderly gentleman walked into the pharmacy and asked for a prescription of Viagra. "How many do you need?" asked the pharmacist. "Just a few, maybe half a dozen," the man replied. "I cut each one into 4 pieces." The pharmacist raised an eyebrow. "That's too small a dose. It won't help with intercourse." The old man chuckled. "Intercourse? I'm over 90. I just want it to stick out far enough so I don't pee on my shoes." A man walks into a pharmacy and spends some time browsing the aisles. Eventually, a salesgirl notices him and asks, "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for a box of tampons for my wife," he replies. She directs him to the right aisle. A few minutes later, he comes to the counter with a giant bag of cotton balls and a roll of string. Confused, the salesgirl says, "Sir, I thought you were buying tampons for your wife." "What's all this?" He sighs and says, "Well, yesterday I sent her to get me a pack of cigarettes. She came back with a tin of tobacco and some rolling papers because it was so much cheaper. So, if I have to roll my own, she can too." Mr. Johnson, retired for a year, was having a conversation with his wife of 50 years when she suggested, "Why don't we take a cruise? We could go somewhere for a week and make wild love like we did when we were young." After some thought, Mr. Johnson agreed. He put on his hat and went down to the pharmacy to buy a bottle of seasick pills and a box of condoms. When he got home, his wife said, "I've been thinking, why don't we make it a month-long cruise?" Mr. Johnson returned to the pharmacy and bought 12 bottles of seasick pills and another box of condoms. Later, his wife suggested, "Since the kids are on their own now, why not cruise around the world?" Mr. Johnson went back to the pharmacy, this time buying 297 bottles of seasick pills and the same number of condoms. At this point, the pharmacist couldn't hold back any longer. "Mr. Johnson, you've been coming here for over 30 years, and I don't mean to pry, but if it makes you this sick, why on earth do you keep doing it?" Mr. Johnson looked at him and replied, "Because it's the only thing that keeps her from getting seasick." A man goes for a job interview as a TV news broadcaster. The interview goes well, but there's one issue. He keeps winking at the camera. The interviewer says, "You have many of the qualities we're looking for, but the winking is a problem. We can't hire you unless you get it under control." The man replies, "No problem. If I take a couple of aspirin, I stop winking for a few hours. Plenty of time to finish the broadcast." "All right, show me," says the interviewer. The man reaches into his right pocket, but instead of aspirin, he pulls out an assortment of condoms in all shapes and sizes. Then he digs into his left pocket and pulls out even more condoms before finally finding the aspirin. He takes them, and his second attempt goes off without a hitch. The interviewer is impressed, but says, "I'd hire you, but we have a policy against hiring womanizers. Too many sexual harassment suits." The man protests, "I'm a happily married man, not a womanizer." The interviewer asks, "Then how do you explain all the condoms?" The man sighs. "Have you ever tried going into a pharmacy, asking for aspirin, and winking the whole time?" A pretty blonde woman is driving down a country road when her car breaks down. She's lucky to be near a farmhouse, so she goes up to the door and asks the farmer if she can stay the night until help arrives. The farmer agrees, but warns her, "You can stay, but don't mess with my sons, Jed and Luke." She looks inside and sees two young men, both in their 20s, and agrees. After they've gone to bed, the woman gets an idea. She quietly sneaks into their room and says, "How about I teach you the ways of the world?" The boys are confused, but she continues, "But I don't want to get pregnant, so you'll need to wear these." She gives them condoms, and the three of them spend the night together. 5 years later, Jed and Luke are sitting on the porch. Jed says, "Remember that blonde woman who stayed here and taught us everything?" Luke replies, "Yeah, I remember." "Well," says Jed, "do you care if she gets pregnant?" "Nope," says Luke. "Then let's take these bloody things off." A dentist was preparing to clean an elderly lady's teeth. Noticing that she was a little nervous, he decided to ease her anxiety with a story as he put on his surgical gloves. "Do you know how they make these rubber gloves?" he asked. She shook her head. "Well," he began, "down in Mexico, they have this huge factory with a big tank of latex. The workers are selected based on hand size, and they each dip their hands into the tank. Then they walk around while the latex sets and dries right onto their hands. Once it's dry, they peel off the gloves and throw them into a big crate marked 'Finished Goods' and start all over again." The woman didn't laugh, but 5 minutes later, as the dentist continued the procedure, she suddenly burst out laughing. Blushing, she said, "I just had a thought. I bet that's how they make condoms." Sophie, a traditional Italian woman, had just gotten married and was still a virgin. On her wedding night, staying at her mother's house, she felt nervous. Her mother reassured her, "Don't worry, Sophie. Luca is a good man. Go upstairs and he'll take care of you." Sophie went upstairs, but when Luca took off his shirt, revealing a hairy chest, she ran downstairs to her mother. "Mama, Mama, Luca has a big, hairy chest." Her mother replied, "Don't worry, Sophie. All good men have hairy chests. Go upstairs. He'll take good care of you." So, Sophie went back upstairs. But when Luca took off his pants, revealing his hairy legs, she ran downstairs again. "Mama, Mama, Luca has hairy legs." Her mother reassured her, "All good men have hairy legs. Go upstairs and he'll take good care of you." Finally, Sophie went upstairs again, but when Luca took off his socks, she saw that he was missing 3 toes on his left foot. Sophie ran downstairs, shouting, "Mama, Mama, Luca has a foot and a half." Her mother, without missing a beat, said, "Stay here and stir the pasta. This is a job for Mama." A young girl decided to try out a miniskirt for the first time. Feeling both excited and nervous, she turned to her brother-in-law for advice. "Hey, can you do me a favor?" she asked shyly. "When I bend over, can you check if my underwear is showing?" The brother-in-law, trying to appear serious, observed her closely as she bent down. After a long moment, he said, "Nope, it's not showing at all. But next time, don't forget to actually wear one." A man went to the dentist to have a tooth pulled, but when the dentist brought out the needle for freezing, the man immediately protested. "No way, I hate needles," he said. Next, the dentist tried offering laughing gas, but the man objected again. "I can't do the gas. The mask feels suffocating." The dentist then asked if the man would be okay with a pill. "No problem," the man said. The dentist returned and handed the man a Viagra tablet. The man, confused, asked, "Wow, I didn't know Viagra worked as a painkiller." The dentist smirked and said, "It doesn't, but it'll give you something to hold on to when I pull your tooth." A guy and a girl meet at a bar, hit it off, and decide to go back to her place. After a few drinks, the guy takes off his shirt, washes his hands, then takes off his trousers and washes his hands again. The girl, intrigued, says, "You must be a dentist." Surprised, the guy asks, "How did you figure that out?" "Easy," she replies. "You keep washing your hands. One thing leads to another, and they make love." Afterward, the girl says, "You must be a really good dentist." Feeling confident, the guy asks, "How did you know that?" She smiles and says, "Didn't feel a thing." An Italian guy is out in Rome picking up women. While at his favorite bar, he spots a striking blonde, and they hit it off. Soon enough, they're back at his place, and they have their way with each other. Afterward, the Italian, pleased with himself, rolls over, lights a cigarette, and asks, "So, did you finish?" She pauses for a moment and replies, "No." Surprised but undeterred, he puts out the cigarette, rolls back on top of her, and this time lasts even longer than the first round. Once again, he rolls over, lights another cigarette, and asks, "So, did you finish?" She responds, "No." Stunned, but still feeling his pride, he puts out the cigarette and gets back to work. After some time and effort, he finally finishes. Barely able to roll over, he lights yet another cigarette and asks, "So, did you finish?" She looks at him, a little confused, and says, No, I'm Swedish." Ed and Carolyn met on a singles cruise, and Ed quickly fell head over heels for her. When they discovered they lived just a few miles apart, Ed was ecstatic. He immediately started asking her out, and within a couple of weeks, they were enjoying dance clubs, restaurants, concerts, movies, and museums together. Ed became convinced that Carolyn was his soulmate and true love. Every date seemed to top the last. On their 1-month anniversary since their first dinner on the cruise ship, Ed took Carolyn to a fine restaurant. After a few cocktails while waiting for their salad, Ed said, "I guess you can tell that I'm very much in love with you. Before we continue with this relationship, there's something serious I need to talk about. I'm a total golf nut. I play, I read about it, I watch it on TV. In short, I eat, sleep, and breathe golf. If that's going to be an issue, I need you to tell me now." Carolyn paused, took a deep breath, and replied, "Ed, that won't be a problem. I love you for who you are, and I love golf too. But since we're being honest, there's something I need to tell you. For the last 5 years, I've been a hooker." Ed paused for a moment, then said, "That's all right. I bet it's because you're not keeping your wrists straight when you hit the ball." A burglar was sneaking into a museum when he noticed the guard on duty sitting with his head in his hands, crying. "I can't believe I've worked here for 10 years and nobody's remembered my birthday again," he moaned. "Longer hours, more work, and no appreciation. I just can't do this anymore." The burglar had the perfect opportunity to slip past, but something about the guard's sadness made him pause. Feeling sympathy, he decided to abandon his plan. Instead of sneaking around, he walked straight down to the curator's office and kicked open the door. Inside were the museum director, the head of HR, and the head of security, deep in a meeting. "What are you doing here? How did you get past the guard?" the director shouted. The burglar, looking at them all, calmly said, "Gentlemen, I'm afraid you've let your guard down." A golfer in Ireland hooked his drive into the woods. While searching for his ball, he found a little leprechaun lying on his back with a big bump on his head and the golf ball beside him. Horrified, the golfer quickly grabbed his water bottle from the cart and poured it over the little guy, reviving him. What happened?" the leprechaun asked, groggy. "I'm afraid I hit you with my golf ball." The golfer replied, "Oh, I see. Well, you got old Patty here fair and square. You get 3 wishes, so what do you want?" the leprechaun said. "Thank God you're all right," the golfer exclaimed. "I don't want anything. I'm just glad you're okay. I apologize again." With that, he walked off. "Wow, what a nice guy," the leprechaun thought to himself. "I'll give him the 3 things I'd want. A great golf game, all the money he ever needs, and a fantastic love life." A year passed, and the golfer found himself back on the same hole, hitting another bad drive into the woods. There, waiting for him, was the leprechaun. "'Twas me that made you hit the ball here," the little guy said with a grin. "Just wanted to ask, how's your golf game?" "My game is fantastic," the golfer responded. "I'm an internationally famous golfer now." He smiled, adding, "By the way, it's good to see you're all right." "Oh, I'm fine now, thank you. I did that for your golf game," the leprechaun replied. "And tell me, how's your money situation?" "Why, it's wonderful," the golfer beamed. "Whenever I need cash, I just reach into my pocket and pull out $100 bills I didn't even know were there." "I did that for you, too. And how's your love life?" the leprechaun asked. The golfer blushed, looked away, and said shyly, "It's okay." Come on now," urged the leprechaun. "I just want to know if I did a good job here. How many times a week do you do the deed?" Blushing even harder, the golfer looked around, then whispered, "Once, sometimes twice a week." "What?" The leprechaun gasped in shock. "That's all? Only once or twice a week?" "Well," the golfer said, "I figure that's not bad for a Catholic priest in a small parish." On Monday morning, a preacher arrived at his church office to find a dead mule in the churchyard. He called the police, but since there didn't seem to be any foul play, they referred him to the health department. The health department said there was no health risk and directed him to the sanitation department. The sanitation manager explained that he couldn't pick up the mule without authorization from the mayor. Reluctantly, the preacher called the mayor, who was known for his bad temper. The mayor didn't disappoint. He immediately began ranting at the preacher. "Why did you call me for this? Isn't it your job to bury the dead?" The preacher, praying for guidance, responded, "Yes, Mayor, 'tis my job to bury the dead, but I always like to notify the next of kin first." During his Sunday sermon, the preacher spoke about forgiving your enemies. After a long sermon, he asked how many in the congregation were willing to forgive their enemies. About half raised their hands. Not satisfied, he continued his sermon for another 20 minutes, and